Bog, ok, radi. Pozdrav svima, možemo, ja mislim, započeti, pa nek se ekipa pridruži kako dolaze. Mislim, službeno je kao u 5, a u 5:15 skrećemo akademska četvrt. Biće sve na engleskom, nadam se da mi je ok s tim, pa evo, možemo početi. Thank you all for coming. So this is the first BUIDL meetup which will happen this year and hopefully next year and the following years. So what BUIDL is about, it's a gathering community of like-minded peers that are interested in blockchain and decentralized world. We are like mostly focused on development, but also we have topics such as design and other topics. It's just important that we are creating stuff and interested in developing some new decentralized solutions. Currently, the only official thing is a meetup group, so join there for further meetups. One of the organizers is UBIC. It's a union for blockchain and cryptocurrency in Zagreb. You can also join as a physical person. The union, it's like 100 kunas per year. You get some perks there, such as discounts on conferences and similar stuff. They are also organizing other things in Croatia, so you can take a look at ubic.ar. And I want to thank all our sponsors. One of them, Node Factory, that's a couple of us. Great Bikes, unfortunately, they are not here today with us, but they will be here next time. They are in Berlin. They are presenting their STO. I'm not gonna shield that here, but you'll have a chance to learn more about the first Croatian STO soon, I guess. And next time they'll bring bikes and all of that. Consensus, if you are developing in Ethereum, you probably have heard for Consensus. They are BUIDL supporters and the BUIDL community. Eternity blockchain, it's not Ethereum, obviously, but we do accept all kinds of blockchains that make sense here. So they are one of the sponsors. You'll have a chance to listen about their blockchain network maybe some next time. ABC Tech, they are a blockchain and fintech, actually development company here in Zagreb, Bosnia, mostly. Yeah, I think that's it. You have seen the agenda. And I'll now introduce our first speaker today. That's Mak Muftić. He's actually an intern in our company, Node Factory. He's been with us for more than 6 months already, and it's when his blockchain journey began, actually. And I guess he's all in love with it because he's still coming every day to job, and he's writing a thesis on blockchain topics. So one big applause for him, please. Thank you.
Okay, so Belma, thank you for your introduction, and hi everybody. As Belma said, my name is Mak. I'm actually a student here at Zagreb at FAIR, and my blockchain journey just started like 6 months ago. I didn't know anything about blockchain. I did buy some Bitcoin and Ethereum before that, but I didn't really know anything about it, and I didn't develop anything on blockchain. So what I'm going to speak about today, well, like the title is cracking down Loom sidechains, and this cracking down part is just generic prefix to any presentation. So Loom sidechains, that's the topic of today. What are Loom sidechains? When to use them? How to use them? Are they any good? And do we have any projects that are already using them in production? Okay, so we have to start with asking us why even to use this kind of technology and these Loom sidechains. Well, because we have some problems that we cannot solve on mainnet and developing applications using only mainnet. Mainnet is great if you just want to send some money and things like that, but if you want to build systems that have a real-time response, it's impossible to do that on mainnet. So a lot of my examples would be about games on blockchain, because that's like a secret passion of mine, and that's why I like the Loom sidechain concept, because they are big on games in blockchain. And currently I'm finishing my thesis at college, and it's about, I developed some game on this Loom sidechain and so on. So the problems are more or less known. Transaction times are too slow. You cannot have a game that needs 14 seconds to execute something, to make a move. Even if you have like a turn-based game, 14 seconds, it's too much. So, but that's not the only problem. Maybe even bigger problem is that mainnet treats all transactions the same. So if you're sending $1 million or one CryptoKitty is the same. In the things that are going behind the scene are the same, and that's not okay, because sending one CryptoKitty is not equal. You don't need equal security behind the scene. So these two problems, the Loom sidechains are handling them, and I think they're handling them pretty good. They're not finished yet with their whole ecosystem, but I think they're on a good path. So we will see that they developed few tools for us and did solve some of the problems that I'm talking about here. So let's start with the Loom network. So what was the idea behind developing this Loom network? Well, the idea was to scale blockchain dApps and systems developed on blockchain. So this Loom network is actually layer 2 blockchain scaling solution, because layer 1 blockchain scaling solutions change the way blockchain itself works. For example, sharding is an example of layer 1 blockchain scaling solution, and it will be implemented probably on Ethereum 2.0. But Loom is just second layer on mainnet, and it deals with some problems, and it deals with them really well. So you have like a mainnet, and you have these sidechains, and you will see that they already have a few sidechains that are dedicated to not just one dApp, but like a part of system that they are developing. So in the beginning, the idea was you have one dApp, and you have one dApp chain or sidechain for that dApp. So the idea was to have dedicated sidechains for every application. We will see that the idea was okay, but they had to pivot it a little bit while they were developing the solution itself. Okay, so what are dApp chains, why they are good, what are benefits of dApp chains, and so on. Well, the first problem that I was talking about is scalability, transaction speed, and transaction fees. That's maybe even the bigger problem, because you don't want to pay for each move in your game. That's nonsense. So how dApp chains solve this problem? Well, the thing is, you have a sidechain that doesn't need to follow all the rules of the mainnet. So especially at this with this Loom sidechains, the dApp chain, you can define what kind of consensus rule sets you are going to use. Out of the box, you can use DPoS or delegated proof of stake, because they already implemented it in their library, but they made it so that you can actually implement other rule sets, but it's not easy task. I tried to do something like that, but it's pretty hard. So you can use this that is out of the box for now, and they have in plan to make even more predefined rule sets to use on these sidechains. So what do you get with this? First, I just want to explain like a delegated proof of stake. I think that a lot of people know what it is, but like the changes, the difference is that you have delegates that are voted by the users of the network, and then they validate transactions in network. With this, you have much faster network that doesn't need to pay fees for transactions and have transaction time under 1 second. So these kind of performances are very good to have, I don't know, games or some systems that are real time on blockchain. So, but it's not all sunny and good because you lose some things. You lose security, but as we talked at the beginning, for some things security is not the issue. Sending CryptoKitties over the blockchain, it's okay not to be super secure because all these blockchains are not totally separated from the mainnet. They write some parts of themselves, and so you have like, you can trace back data to the mainnet, and you actually cannot lose all the data. But for these fast transactions, they are great because you have much more responsive system. So, except of that, dApp chains are democratic, and you can actually, if you think that, because I talked that we are developing, let's say we are developing a game on this system. So developers of that game make a new patch of the game and it's bad. You don't like it. Maybe you and 50 more people. So you vote that you don't like the new patch and you fork away from that patch and play on your version of the game. So that's the idea of democratic dApp chain and sidechains, because you can, inside of that sidechain, you can vote to fork from the sidechain itself. And they're actually secure, but in their own way. That means that they're secure enough for purpose that we are using them and we are going to use them in the future. They're secure enough because you have to design systems so that you have this low security transactions running on these sidechains, and when you have, I don't know, sending some ether or real value, then you go to the mainnet. So, but the thing is that people that want to cheat the system and this blockchain, they don't have incentive to do that, because on sidechains you're maybe dealing with some, I don't know, things that doesn't have a real value. So why would someone even go and bother doing something bad with that? But on the mainnet, when you transfer money, then there is an incentive. So I think that's a big thing with these sidechains, that you just transfer things on sidechains that are not so important in the financial meaning, so nobody will even bother to do anything with that. And it's not even an easy task again. Even if you want to trick them, it's not like you just can trick them easy, but it's much easier than on the mainnet because you have different proof of concept and so on. So, what are actually dApp chains? There are dApps that are really dApps. What I mean by that, there are dApps that are actually running only on blockchain. Because today, when we were developing dApps, you have one part of the blockchain and you always have some backend part of it, AWS or something like that. So it's not only blockchain app, it's system that has a blockchain app inside of it. So with these dApp chains and this whole ecosystem of sidechains, you actually have dApps that are sitting only on blockchain. Then you can actually build a full-scale apps such as MMO games or social media using only blockchain, because you don't have cost of gas. Transactions are free on the sidechain and speeds are very good. I think that but I will be talking about these sidechains that are already in production, and all transaction times are under 0.7 seconds, I think, something like that. So performance of these sidechains are really good. So okay, but there's still one problem, because that's all fun and nice, because you can transfer some CryptoKitties or some game stuff and like that. But what if you want to use these sidechains for the real project that is not games and fun? And if you want to pull in some real assets to the sidechain and do something with them, and then return some values after you processed some assets. So that's why they developed this Plasma solution that's actually Plasma implementation for Loom sidechains. And they did it on a very specific way. I will be showing this Plasma chain that is actually a sidechain that is used to import and export assets inside of sidechains. And how do you do these kind of things? Well, I will just skip a bit, sorry, because I like to have this graph when I'm talking about it. I will come back. Okay, so how do you use this Plasma or Plasma chain? You have a layer 2 sidechain that is run by Loom organization, and when you want to transfer, and you have your sidechain that's actually a layer 3 scaling solution, and then through this Plasma chain, you put some, let's say Ether. You need Ether to play some game, okay? And you send one Ether to Plasma chain. Plasma chain saves that Ether and gives you Plasma cash. That's just a token that says, okay, I send one Ether to sidechain number 4, so here's your Plasma cash that says that you are owner of Ethereum that you send. So on sidechain, you work with Plasma cash. After you're finished, you use Plasma cash to retrieve your Ether back or part of it, and so on. Okay, so how did they even come to this Plasma cache, Plasma chain solution? Well, first they developed these dApp chains that are that relation one dApp chain, and after 6 months they got a lot of feedback from developers, and like a lot of developers said, oh, it's great, we can make our sidechains, but we don't actually need that all the time. We just need like some sidechain that is fast to do some transactions, and we don't want to deploy our own sidechain for every project. So the Loom Network development team made Plasma chain, and it's not just used for export and import assets inside your own sidechains. You can actually do transactions on this sidechain. It's a public sidechain, but you have to pay for it. I will come to that part. So they have a bigger idea of how to make dApp chains and how to scale them. So, but to use their sidechains like Plasma chain, you have to pay something. So they have a Loom token. It's just another token, and you can do like, I don't know, a lot of things with. You can play some games that they developed and so on. But the most important thing is this: you can pay to run dApps on Plasma chain. So you can deploy your dApp on Plasma chain and pay with this Loom token, and you pay by number of transactions, I think. So your dApp is on sidechain that is much faster, and transaction times are really good, and you actually are paying and not the user that is using your product. And the pricing is actually really cheap. So what is the bigger idea of the whole Loom project and products that they're developing? They actually are making an ecosystem of 3 layers or 2 layers upon of Ethereum first layer mainnet to scale dApps. So you have these like relays like Plasma chain that you use to export and import assets from the mainnet. And you have your own sidechains that you use for your applications. You even have sidechains in layer 3 that are general purpose sidechains. For example, they have a layer 3 sidechain that's called game chain. Yeah, I think it's called game chain. And the idea is that if you're developing a game for a blockchain, you use that game chain as a sidechain for making all transactions. And that's the most, the best example actually, because that's the only game that's really working in production. Is their Battleground Zombies, or Zombies Battleground, I'm not sure was the order. Because when you're starting the game, you take your set of cards that are saved on layer 2 plasma chain, and you import them to the game chain on the layer 3, and you do all the battles where transactions are free and fast on the layer 3 sidechain. After you're finished with your battles, like saving the game, you save if you lost some cards or gained some cards to the layer 2 plasma chain. And one interesting thing is that you can even communicate between the layer 3 sidechains through the layer 2 plasma chain without even contacting the Ethereum mainnet. Because plasma chain is synchronizing its state with the Ethereum network, so that security is not, so you have that you remain, so that you keep a level of security, but you can use it like a relay to communicate even between these layer 3 sidechains. Is it a production-ready system? Well, I don't think it is. I tried to develop few they're not products, but they are some kind of examples and college stuff on this plasma chain. And it's good, you can use it. It's actually really good for developing games, because that is the path they're taking at the first, because they think that games are, that they are going to be the engine that is running this blockchain revolution, especially this scaling revolution. So they have a lot of products, a lot of libraries and so on, but I think that they need still 6 months to a year to be actually production ready. Today they have a lot of their own products on these sidechains. As I said, they have a game that is purely run on blockchain. On this game chain, they have a social network that is run on another layer 3 sidechain that's called social chain, I think, probably. And they planned in future to make even more these dedicated layer 3 sidechains for specific uses. So it's, it is production ready if you just want to have this sidechain for your application. And to use this bigger ecosystem, I think that they still need a little bit of work to be ready. So that's it. I hope that you learned something and enjoyed it, and thank you for listening. And of course, if you have any questions, I will try to answer them, but yeah.
About the defaults.
Okay.
So it's talked about that Ethereum is going to have defaults on the mainnet. So how does that change impact?
I didn't heard that. I'm sorry. Like Ethereum 2.0 will have depots as, or I'm not sure.
Maybe I'm wrong then. It's not the plan, right? Defaults is going to be on the platform.
I don't think that would be a good thing to have depots on mainnet, but it's actually, it works pretty well when you have like these sidechains and when you need much faster transaction time.
Okay, so then I got it wrong. I heard that it's going to be like some hybrid, first hybrid phase, and then the Ethereum at one point is going to transfer to delegated. Am I wrong there? Or?
If someone knows something about this, I'm interested as well, so I don't know.
I mean, I also have a question like him. How much work do you have to invest
Yeah, but I don't think that there will be a lot of work. First, I think that people developing this whole ecosystem they know what's happening with Ethereum 2.0, so I don't think they're not thinking in that direction. And the another thing is that these sidechains are pretty isolated from the mainnet. So they do their own thing and they just synchronize with the mainnet. So I don't think that will be a big problem, but I don't know enough things to be sure about that.
Okay, regarding Ethereum and 2.0, I mean, a lot of things such as like transferring apps for Ethereum, old Ethereum to new Ethereum, it's currently not known at this point how exactly it will look like. I mean, there are still 2 more years to completely create fully working, let's say, and scaled solution. But you can ask more Marin, and Adidas shirt back, more about it. He's been involved with core development, but the questions you have asked I don't think they are currently answerable now. But yes, Ethereum will use not delegated proof of stake, but proof of stake, so, okay. Our second speaker today is Marko Prljić. He's actually a designer. I've met him. Yeah, because development designers. Yeah, so it will be interesting to see what he has to say about the development of blockchain application, decentralized applications, and how to solve the user experience problem that we all can say exists exists now. I don't know. Let's hear what does he have to say. Big applause, please.
No. I really need to speak to this.
Yeah, please.
I don't like mics, but anyway. Okay, thank you. Does this work? Sorry, Belma, does this work? Yeah? Okay. I got a stiff neck, sorry. I'm gonna move over here. No, here. No, this doesn't work. What? Belma, fix this, please. You need to turn it on. You need to turn it on. Woohoo! All right. Still doesn't work. Wow. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Marko. I'm a designer. By the way, the talk beforehand, I didn't understand a thing. Like, I have no idea what he was talking about. Except I do know, how this stuff works, but, no idea. I do hope that you will, find my talk a little bit also interesting, because how many designers do we have here, or people who are involved in design? Like nobody, right? Cool. How many people can raise their hand? Like, can you raise your hand? Yeah. Well, I like to say that you raise your hand, you're a designer. Like, everyone is a designer. Because, basically, like, not designing, like, the craft that we designers use, but, like, we're shaping things, so we're basically designing something. So whether you're a developer, you're a baker, or whoever, you actually design stuff. So, yeah, my background is design. I worked at the consultancies. I ran my own agency. I've been into startups, entered the blockchain space around 2012, 2013. Did some trading and stuff, but other than that, I've been following the industry quite a lot, and most recently been involved in a couple of blockchain projects. I'm a UX lead at Giveth, if you heard about Giveth, and as well doing a lot of stuff around the DAOs, and also being a UX advisor and consultant for a project called Tribute Co-op. I'm not sure if you heard about that. And yeah, I'm going to talk about design today. Just a quick disclaimer. And this talk is not about me being like a frustrated designer who, thinks that the UX design is super important and, the most important thing in the world. But I just want to give you like the heads up, because we're like we're deep down our heads with the development. I respect it; it's a great thing, but a lot of time we forget about the design side of the things. So this talk is more like a a heads up and a wake up call again to remind ourselves that we should be thinking about design as well. And your I don't know, your view of design may be different than mine, so you'll see what I mean. So in next 20 minutes, 20-ish minutes, I first have a rant. I need to rant this. This is just from last year's Web3 summit. This is bothering me, so I'm going to rant a little bit, 5 minutes, and I'm going to show you what the UX looks like now and how it looked like then, and building some usable consumer-facing products for Web3. So the first thing, please stop saying everything is UX. Like, hey, this is UX problem, or hey, this is how we solve the UX thing, or we did an enhancement of the UI and this is like great user experience. It's not a user experience. What we address most of the time are basic or fundamental interactions principles that should be implemented by default by designers. So the term is a lot of times misused and overused. So the reason why we should stop, labeling everything as a UX is because we're labeling the wrong things and we're not focusing on the right things. Yeah, decentralization. I know. Don't jump on me. Don't hate me right now, please. I know we're building a decentralized future, and that's great. I love it. We breathe for that, but our users really don't care. They don't care. Just like privacy. Maybe not now. They will care. But it takes brains to figure it out, or to actually figure out what decentralization really means. So, yeah, I'm not implying that we have stupid people, but, there are better developer positions than decentralization. I know, don't build for mass adoption. We all strive for mass adoption, right? We want everybody to use our great Web3 stuff and decentralized applications, but we should be focusing right now on we should be narrowing our target audience, we should be focusing our early adopters, testing some of the products that we're building, iterating, getting feedback, getting into that loop, and then improving these products over and over, and mass adoptions will eventually follow. Yeah, so we're moving on. Here's what people say about crypto and Web3 UX. This is most recently that I found on Twitter. And in general, if you can, you'll see that basically everybody says like crypto UX sucks. It sucks. Everybody's saying it's bad. But if you read a little bit of these tweets here, what I found really great about is that people started to think about the value of the products that they're building, which is a really important thing. And this is something that I'm gonna address a little bit later. So yeah, we're not talking like, yeah, it sucks, like I need to download MetaMask and I need to do this and that and all this kind of stuff. But they're actually starting to talk about the value that they're delivering to their users. Call them users, customers, or however you like. This is my favorite. I love this one. Like, this is crime against humanity. I had to put this one because it's great. And there's a couple of people older here. I'm not sure when you entered the internet age. I'm a little bit later than the dot-com boom, so I remember all this stuff. I'm 36, so I guess that's fine. But interesting, people were talking about the similar things. Like, I love this one. It's like a surgical precision work, to get on the internet and do some stuff. So basically, it's a similar thing that people are talking about now in Web3 UX. But what I say, it sort of crept into their lives slowly. So it's a process, right? Back then, like, I pulled this off, like, the installation basics. You got to read them, and I'm going to show you later on why. Like, before then, back then, the people who were producing these software, this hardware, were the same users that were the same people who were using them and then actually selling them to the customers. So there was no UX back then. There was no design. It was hard to, the computers were expensive. Email was a novelty back then. Websites took ages to load and so on and so forth. Coming back to the future, not sure if you have seen this before. These are the steps to onboard to the crypto space, to whatever dApp you want to use. This is an outline of Taylor Monahan, who gave a talk at the ECC this year in Paris. It's basically pretty similar to what we had back then. Moving on, Mr. Apple here says that you got to start with the customer experience and work backwards to the technology. Now, if we look at the current blockchain space, and by the way, I half of this, or even more than a half, I don't even know what these products are. It's hard to keep up, obviously. But what I'm seeing here is like pieces of puzzles, right? Or many, we can call them products themselves because they're products, you know, on their own. But we have the infrastructure. We have all these projects or products that solve some particular problem. You were the developers, you're developing this technology, and what we do next is actually start building out of this technology. We start taking some advantages, some benefits, some features, and start building products that are actually going to be used by people, consumers, or a larger audience that actually have some value. So we can start combining them. And that's where we get to this part where we start building competitive and usable consumer-facing products. What I mean by consumer-facing is what I said before, the products that have some real value to a wider audience. The feasible part is the tech. That's something that we have. It's composed on 3 parts, by the way. It's feasible, viable, and desirable. The feasible part is that this is what we do now. This is the infrastructure that we have. The viable is the business part. Now we didn't figure out the business part other than the tokenization maybe on token economics and so on and so forth. So I'd love to see what we're gonna come up with next, other than the Libra thing, whatever. And now the most important part is the desirable part, and this is where the value to the humans come, and the user experience design play a great role in building these products. So to do that, we need to first develop a strong value proposition. I'm not sure if you have ever heard about what value proposition is. This is something that is that most of the products and startups before are trying to figure out what is the value that they're actually giving to their consumers, their customers, to the users, and how that fits with their business models. So right now we know what we're building, we know how we're doing that, but the missing part is that we don't know why in most cases. Some of the tools that we can use are value proposition canvas, market research, user research, personas, scenarios. These are all UX methods that we designers use. Maybe you have never heard of them, or maybe you know about them but never actually participated in such exercise with any designers. But if you hire designers, they will know what to do. The next thing is that you need to define your target audience. Now, this is a really important one. When I said before, like we should narrow our target audience right now. For example, at Give It, we wanted to actually go and go wider to a wider public. But then we said like no, this is not a good thing. We want to target the Ethereum community. We want to first get people who are very familiar with using Ethereum wallets and so on and so forth, because the donation and fundraising and milestones and so on and so forth is quite a complicated thing, especially with all these wallets and this kind of stuff. So it takes a technical knowledge. So we said, no, we're not going to go for a wider audience. We're actually going to target the crypto community, the early adopters, and then expand. We're going to get feedback from them. We're going to get some insights. We're going to fix some issues. We're going to deploy again. We're going to iterate. We're going to test, and so on and so forth in cycles. So it's important to have to define your target audience first, because this is where you get most insights from. This is how you're going to first test your product the best possible way. I don't like to swear, so I had to just take a screenshot of this slide, because you have to do a lot of research and make no assumptions. And I think this one perfectly fits because, as it says, like assumptions is the mother of all beep. And this was from Maria Paula as well on the ECC conference in Paris this year. It's important that you don't assume that you know what your users will do, what your users need. Actually, you have to research, you have to do user interviews, you have to do all these user experience exercises and methods to actually research your users and get more insights about them, so that you can create your product and target and specifically to them. The next big thing is the business model. Now, in no particular order, this should actually be the first slide. But anyway, having a business model is really important. Right now, we're using token economics. I would like to see something more beyond that. One of the thoughts that I have while I was doing this was previously in the startup days or years, we actually started to, there was a lot of competition. People were building similar products. People were offering, try to differentiate a lot. I wonder what will happen now. We're not competing with each other yet, but I can see a lot of similar products and projects being launched every day, and the race has already started. So back then, the differentiator was, among other features and benefits that they're providing to their users, was the user experience. That played a big role, and it was a great return of the investment. How can you approach design and fix some of the issues, or actually start thinking in that direction, creating your value proposition, figuring out your target audience, and creating a business model? And this is a list of just some of the tools and methods and processes that designers use to get to those answers. These are the tools that are already here existing, so we're not actually figuring anything new. We're using what we have right now, and we should be using that right now. One that I highlighted here is the Web3 Design Decision Framework, which has been created by my friends Beltran and Akil. It was presented at DEF CON last year, which is actually a great little framework that you can use, even new developers, so it does not require any expertise, that you can use to figure out how are you going to structure, how are you going to design or solve some of the problems that you're with your product for your users. Now, the only one thing here is that this framework is actually heavily focused on decentralization, which you can just replace with any other benefit of the blockchain. So be it transparency, immutability, removal of middleman or whatever, security, and just place that one instead of decentralization and think about it. There's still a lot of work to do, especially for us designers. But when I mean us designers, we're the ones that are probably gonna push this more than you are, but everyone is involved in this, so are you. We need to think about new language and terminology. For example, recently at Giveth we had this new thing called conviction voting. Now this conviction thing Word is not really suited for, it's, yeah, devs probably understand it, but not the wider audience. There are a lot of terms that we use today in Web3 space that are really hard to understand, so we need to find some replacement. It's really tough. We collaborate in an open source Web3 design to figure out what we can use instead, and it always falls down to a sentence explaining one word, so it's tough. Interaction design patterns, some things that will become standard. It's something that we're gonna see a lot in the future, because once we start building more and more products, people are gonna adopt these things. Mental models and behavioral patterns that we have right now using the products that we use right now in our pocket with our phones, they actually do not apply to the Web3, or not that much. So this is something that we need to work as well a lot. Developing new blockchain-specific design tools and methods similar to the Web3 design decision framework. I'm also working on the design sprint process, the traditional one from Google, but we want to apply that onto the blockchain and see, how we can modify that a little bit, make it specific. And I'd love to see more of these methods being strictly tailored for the Web3 and blockchain space, as well as developing some technical solution for better accessibility and usability. And this is where you developers actually come in, because if you create something the other way around that is easier for end user, then we designers can think about how the interaction flow will be done. If you gave us that solution, right? If we don't have that technical solution, we're forced to use what we have right now. And these are the 45 steps outlined previously for the onboarding. So wrapping up, crypto user experience is, well, actually it's not that bad. Well, yeah, it's bad, but it is what it is. So I say we should adapt and innovate. Things to remember: to narrow your target audience at this moment, and iterate on your products that you're building, get insights, do some research, develop a strong value proposition. If you're building whatever consumer-facing product, think about that value proposition. Try to figure out a business model beyond the token economy, beyond the tokenization. See if something you can come up with, and use available problem-solving tools and methods that I outlined previously. And one of the most important things is that you should hire designers. Why? Because they know how to, guide you through these processes. They don't have all the answers in the world, but you need those people in your team. I'm booked, so don't hire me. But if you hire a designer, you will be working with them closely. You will also be pretty much involved in these processes. So it's not like I'm hiring a designer and he'll take care of all that stuff and I'm good to go. And yeah, I think, that's it. I'm out. Thank you. Oh, yeah. I'm not sure if all of you designers here have a question for the designer. But go ahead. Sure.
From your experience, what are issues currently linked only to the blockchain, but not in any other sector like banking or finance or gaming? What are unique challenges?
Wallet. Yeah, it's pain. I mean, I wouldn't say it's like the top of my mind, but the whole thing, the whole process, the whole on-ramp, okay, we do have now on and off ramps quite easily, but if you want to interact with a Web3 decentralized application, it's filled with a lot of terms that you don't understand, maybe, the wider audience, maybe that you don't understand, and also requires a lot of effort, right? Things don't run smoothly. There's a lot of things on your screen that you need to take visually, that you need to look for, that you've never seen before, stuff like that. So in terms of that, does that answer your question, or were you thinking something more technically?
My reading into the topic
we're talking about financial applications, right? Well, it's not all systems. It's different. Like financial. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
My question was, what system do you see will the customer have to learn these new topics, the wallet, the ether, buying ether?
Yeah, it's the most easier thing is in financial application. That's the most easier thing. Well, because you know you've seen that before. Also the ICOs and all these kind of stuff. It's you know money, handling money and all that stuff. You know, it's money. Yeah, you're careful about it. So you read everything, right? But if you go to CryptoKitties, you don't care. You're like, these are CryptoKitties. You just click on the button. You don't care what happens, right? So in terms of that, it's a specific thing, right? It's the different from financial application, for example, Give It, what we're doing there, or Tribute, for example, the cooperatives or DAOs or whatever. These are kind of different things. So I couldn't like mix them two and give you one answer that, you know, for everything. So. But if you have a further question, I'm glad to chat with you later if you want. So, yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Security is. It's a good point. It's a good point, and it's something that I was actually, you know, I was actually talking to people and saying over the time again. You know, if you're building a product that doesn't have to be if don't build a wallet, another wallet, or you know, don't introduce me everything at start. Like if you know, can you postpone the security a little bit later in your product? Like, you know what I mean? So when a critical situation comes, so this is where, for example, user journey mapping comes in, which is a UX matter, which designers know, and if we can postpone. The security part where you ask me to, you know, secure my private key and everything else, you know, then that's fine, that's great, you know. I'm not saying we should sacrifice security for that, but we need to educate people a lot about all these kind of stuff. Where's their data going? What's going on right now? You know, all these feedback has to come through the user interface as well. At some times it can be overwhelming as well. So yeah, I'm not sure if I answered your question, but I wouldn't sacrifice security for, I don't know, a lighter user interface or whatever interactions. It's a question of a specific use case scenario of what product you're building or whatever. If security is number one and, you know, financial kind of things, or if you're building a game, right? At some point you don't care about that much of security until it comes to that part where actually users are starting to deal with some funds or whatever transactions they're doing, right?
The nice thing about decentralization, actually, for most people you're dealing with really small amounts of money, even if it's like a couple €1,000.
You said centralized or decentralized? Yeah.
So people have their own wallet, like your own bank.
Yeah. But you still. Even if it's a little bit like, you know, dust, you care about that. So, yeah. Yeah, no, not at all.
Like the only thing maybe credit card save is actually there's this bank behind it, like there's insurance. Like
Yeah.
bank if someone scams me.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
Credit card would be really hard to use. Like, I mean, you just swipe it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I mean, anyway, you know, security is super important. But again, it really depends on the specific product that you're building and use case scenario. So, you know, also can't be answered like, you know, one general, you know, answer and say like, hey, this is it, like, you know. Anyone else? Great. You see how many questions there? The design is great. Like, people love design. Okay, go ahead. Not very much, but yeah.
Software as a service, fixed monthly rate subscriptions that people are using.
It sucks.
I'm paying this much per month to use this centralized on a server service. And now we have dApps where we have utility tokens which vary in price. So how do you see?
Well, it depends. They don't.
Their
they don't need to, yeah, they don't need to vary in price. They don't need to be, you know, they can be fixed or whatever. And this is where I guess, you know, token engineering comes in. As I said, I'm not a developer. I'm not like in that subject way too much, but from what I know, the incentives can be leveled, like, you know, can be like, you know, for the service provider and the user as well. The incentive system can be figured out a little bit differently, you know, stuff like that. So I don't know. I wouldn't think of, you know, in terms of a traditional software as service and these, what do you say, the subscription models and stuff like that, because that's, I don't know, that's a little bit pain. Like, if we're gonna, you know, do the same thing, like, we can figure out something better. And when I say figure out something better, I mean creating the value for the users, for people who are using that, being fair, being transparent, and making money. We can do that, right? We have a lot of projects that, you know, that use these incentives models to, you know, to reward users. But again, on the other side, they, you know, they have a profit from that. So everybody wins, right? Both sides, everybody's happy. There, a lot of thinking should go into that as well. This is just from top of my head right now, but I'd love to see more fairness and more transparency in those business models. Yeah. Anyone else? No? Yeah? Nope.
Okay, thank you, Marko. I hope you gave these developers new ideas to implement the design in the process. I think we can share the slides later on meetup group, and also it's a recording, so it will be on YouTube sometime in the following days. Our third talk is about fair data society. Guys, Tadej and Zenel and Tadej came from Slovenia today to talk about their project, and please, another big applause for them to greet them.
Hi. So maybe a few words about me. I come from consulting world, from data analytics and that stuff. And primarily we were working a lot with big corporations, and you know, after a quarter of a century working with big corporations, it's becoming a little bit boring. So I decided to take from time to time a startup or two and to work with them just to refresh myself and being normal again. That's where I got into that blockchain business. You know, if you know how to code, and when somebody tells you there is something that has value and that you can program in, that's no-brainer that this will be the thing. And it all happened. I was not involved in Bitcoin. I was not interested in that. But when I heard about Ethereum, that was a game changer for myself. So, and then, you know, the DAO happened, and we discovered that maybe that's the moment. You know, there was something like 170 millions invested in the DAO at that time. I think it was that was kind of a number. And that was actually the turning point when we said, okay, so there is money, and people want to invest in very early stages of businesses. And then we started that thing that is called economy. It's here. And that was the first bigger ICO in European Union. The project, I think last week, we did everything that was promised, so everyone is now able to do his own fund with any kind of digitalized assets, which I think it's a great achievement. So that is something like 3 years ago. But what was really interesting was that we had this knowledge and understanding what tokenization means, and then we started to help all the other projects around Europe. I think I worked with most of the number ones in each country in Europe. The first one in Croatia, that is DEP. They're also playing around with cryptos. And their product is great again. On the other side, we have my colleague, Tadej. Should I tell? Huh? Okay, Tadej will tell it. Not it.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Tadej Fius. I come from Slovenia. I've been, from Sevnica, where the lady comes from. So I've been in this data management, data streaming, big data stuff when it was like coming all from the start, basically, right? I did a lot of stuff in medical field. We did a lot of simulation kind of stuff. I have like a small studio. We do games, we do VR, we do augmented reality. But basically, down to the ground, if we go deep down, everything is just data, right? It doesn't matter if there is like a lever that you have to represent, or if there's like some other very private, very sensible data that you want to store or manipulate or transform or whatever you want to do with it, right? So at the end of the day, they're just numbers. It doesn't matter. I like, and I work a lot on AI. I did a lot of stuff on compilers. I just enjoy programming. So that's me.
So, but then that was summer 2016. It was the same time as we actually were before lunch of economy. I met a friend of mine that I haven't seen for quite a long time. It was Gregor Žaucer, one of the co-founders of Data Fund, and he said, you know, this field with the tokenization, with all the abilities of Ethereum, this is the real answer for the data problems we will have really, really soon. So maybe we are a little bit too early, but you know, everything that we talk about, that you can read about Facebook, how they're threatening us, you know, all the Cambridge Analytica stuff and the other stuff. The point of everything is that in this digital world, where our society is actually heading, the data, your personal data, will be the most precious thing we will possess. And this is the basic idea of Data Fund. Oh, by the way, I started to study mathematics, and then it turned out I wanted to be computer program, but I decided that computer programming is actually too sexy to actually live for that work. So then I switched to sociology, and then I'm coming back to this beautiful world of programming. So, but here we have this word ownership. So you have to own your personal data. It sounds super simple, but it is extremely hard when you start to think about what that exactly means. So the first question is where to store it, your personal data. We have two different options right now. One is in the centralized system, and we saw that if that is centralized, then human grid can start to function and you do strange stuff. On the other side, we have the other option. It is on your devices. So the most precious thing would be saved only on your device. And the hardware just, it might happen and gets broken. So there should be the third option. And this is the third option is the decentralized worlds. The other thing is, so if these things are saved, stored in decentralized worlds, still the value of that comes from analysis and doing something with the data. So they have to be accessible all the time. We should know where they are. And even more, because of the legislation, they should also deal with consents. And at the end of the day, whatever we think about this new economy and blah, 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 we should somehow say, hey, ordinary Joe, you know, this is an issue and you should really start to think about it. And then we have the GDPR. You know about GDPR. It's a pain. So if you would ask any corporations about GDPR, it's a big pain. But we understand it a little bit different. GDPR for us is very good. It is actually enabler of our, what we call fair data society. So basically the situation we have right now is that we have corporations that have a lot of data, but they don't have consents that they can use them. So basically they should get rid of them. On the other side, we have individuals, all of us, that we have the data, that we have the rights to use them, but we have no data. And there is the biggest trick right now. So the all, you know, data as a new oil, etc. It's actually, that doesn't exist. We have all the analytics, all these capabilities, but basically we are talking about something that we corporations, we cannot use. So the moment where this thing, data, becomes useful and we start to talk about assets, it's when they get consents. And this is the basic idea of data fund. So how to put data together and how to transform them into assets. That's the basic idea. We decided to build that thing on Swarm. Swarm is one of the, how to say, it's part of the holy trinity of the Ethereum whole idea and the vision. So we have Ethereum that takes care about computation. Then we have Swarm that takes care of memory, so about storing stuff. And then we have communication part, which is taken care by PSS and Whisper. Obviously, since Ethereum is one of the biggest communities of developers in the world right now, this thing will be here to stay. So Swarm provides censorship-resistant storage and communication infrastructure for a sovereign digital society. So it's strong, but I like the other one. It's BitTorrent on steroids. that was said in a speech by Victor Tron, who is in charge of Swarm, and it's also one of our co-founders. But let us be concrete. So what are we actually doing? So you must have something that you can grab and you really understand what you want to achieve with that data. So the question is how to store an extremely big chunk of data, let us say 1 gigabyte, which is for decentralized worlds quite a big issue. It's not that simple. So we are here talking about few 10 megabytes. We're not talking about the big ones. And what is even more interesting, that will be rarely accessed, not even the whole data set, but only small parts of it, and only few times in the lifetime. So you put something there, it is big, but it will not be used that often. And we are talking here about DNA sequence. So the biggest problem right now that we want to solve is how to store that thing and make it accessible. For example, if you have your DNA test done, the whole sequence, you store it somewhere, and then today's magic machines in the decentralized world, they access the data set, but only few bytes. And on basis on those few bytes, they can say that you are intolerant for that and that kind of ingredients. And then we are talking about UX and how blockchain becomes interesting and how we get real value. That's the point. Imagine what can retailers do with that. So this is what we're doing. So Swarm is an extremely great thing. But there are a few things that need to be done. For example, how to store 100 gigabytes. That's, for example, what we did a few months ago and was presented at Swarm meetup in Madrid recently. Then pinning is how to store that kind of data for a long time. Then how to add consents on top of it. Then we have fair drop and fair drive. It's UX, beautiful, la la la, application of what we are doing. And then we have compute node, another beautiful thing, and FDS JSON, and few demonstrations. So to do that, we have 3 steps we need to fulfill. First is the reclaim phase, the own phase, and the manage phase of your personal data. And it's super structured. We will not go through that. But basically, we found out that we need to somehow run 2 different streams of activities. The first one is the left side. It's about fair data society. It's about fairness. Here, we are building technology that enables you as a person to put together the best data set of you. So whatever is there in corporations, in, I don't know, Facebooks, how to retrieve those data, and put them on one single place. So you can benefit of it. So basically it's like finding this intolerance, finding, for example, what is the fair, what is your credit score, etc. So a lot of different kinds of useful things that you can get out of this data. And GDPR is great for that, because GDPR, by default, all corporations have to give you the access to data in machine-readable format. That's the important part. But, you know, this is a big problem. So that's why we don't want to build each importer. We are building the technology that will be used by the others to build this kind of importers for that purpose. On the other side, we have also Data Fund. Data Fund, its mission is how to transform that data, very rich data about yourself, with your consent, into assets. So how to put together with the data also the corporate part. We strongly believe that this blockchain space, the only way that it really gets the real value is to not to neglect the corporate part, but use it and actually we should offer them something that is tangible and useful. So I will slowly pass my microphone to my colleague today. There are a lot of things that can be shown today, but first of all, there will be FairDrop. It's an application where you will see that there is no blockchain visible. The other thing is FDS. This is the library where you can start to work with Swarm. And there is Chatty, which is just an application. But no, not that fast. I'm still here. Yeah. So what we want to do with that, we want to invite you to start building using that library.
Okay, I'm sorry for being a little bit. Okay. Okay, so FairDrop. FairDrop, I will start from the beginning. It's an application that's actually hosted on Swarm, right? When we come to it, it comes from Swarm. So what is Swarm? Swarm, do you know what Swarm is? Like decentralized storage space. You connect to nodes. It uses distributed hash table, Academia, to connect to other nodes, and they share the same logical space, right? So you can imagine that these nodes can be big, they can be like thin, they can contain like gigabytes and gigabytes of information, or they can be really like small. Imagine having like a Swarm node in your television, in your car, in your fridge. And all the data that comes, it doesn't go anymore to Samsung, it goes to you. It doesn't go to the producer of the device or something. It goes directly to you. You own the keys. It's your data. And then you do whatever you want with that data. And it will be everywhere. It will be everywhere, and it will be big and small. But in this space, it doesn't matter where it is, because it's like all over this logical space, right? So what we have now is basically like, think of it as of WeTransfer. I will show it, you will see the account creation, which in background actually creates the account. We give you some test ether. We deploy you like a mailbox. It's a smart contract where you can accept new connections and get stuff. This is still the first iteration. Now we presented the new one called Multibox. It's much more powerful, much more agile, I would say. And then we will do a demo of sending one file to another account. So you can use like drag and drop, and maybe I'll move this a little bit. So I can send it encrypted. I send it like unencrypted. I will send it encrypted. I will choose my account, and I will log in, and I will send this. I will send this to Texas. No, I'll send it to Amen. Yeah, so now I will unlock it, and I will encrypt this file, and all this encryption is actually happening now here in the browser, right? And as it will be encrypted, it will be sent, put into the Swarm, and we get back the hash, which is actually the digest. It's a root of Merkle tree. So how Swarm works, you get this hash, the root of Merkle tree, and then you traverse this tree, and as you traverse the tree, you collect back the chunks. You put these chunks together. These chunks are like 4 kilobytes big, and you collect them, and you give them the whole file, right? And what you can do with this, it's maybe out of the scope for now, but let's focus on this. So now I send this file. It's encrypted. Nobody can touch this, right? So how it went? I used Diffie-Hellman technique. So I took the recipes, public key, and I used my private key, and I encrypted everything and sent this on Swarm, and I told the recipe, look, you have the message, right? None of this here, as you can see, that you can't see anything of this that's happening in the background. It's all like hidden. There's no addresses, no nothing. Everything is just like names, very simple for user and direct, right? So it's like a V-transfer, right? But very secure, very decentralized. Everything is decentralized. Okay, so I'll log in to this one. So if I go here, I should get this file. No. No, don't get it. There's something wrong. Maybe I should. I will create a new mailbox again. Anyhow, I promise that I will do this. So, let me see this. So, the account is created. We gave you some Ether. We are registering your subdomain on ENS. We are deploying the contract. We are giving the ENS the information where the contract is. So, you have like your own subdomain. And that should be it. Right? This now supports, fuck, it's not. It is, okay. So it now supports, I think that around 100 megabytes, but what we presented in Madrid is now going up to 100 gigabytes. So there is no service actually that gives you this amount of quantity that you can send. You can't send 100 gigabytes over WeTransfer or Dropbox. There is no service that can enable you this, right? So this is FairDrop. We took all this basic functionality, everything that's how it's made, and except the design, and we put this into the FDS.js. It's a small library. You just use npm. You can include it in your React or whatever app you want to do. It's just like a JavaScript library. You can do account creation in one line of code, and you can send a file in one line of code. Very simple. Everything is like in the background. You can go inside if you want to see how the things are done. It's all open source. We're still waiting for security audit, for notice. But yeah, very, very powerful techniques to send files around, right? So as we were writing tests, and you know, when you write tests, you test different kinds of functionality if it works, and you try to break things up. And we did break things a lot. But there's also one thing that happened is that we found out that we can do a chat app. So we did a chat app, right? So we have, on the left, we have the contacts and all the stuff that's happening, and you can send all kind of data, and you can visualize this data, and you can share. You can even share, like, shared secrets, right? You can do groups. So I create like a private key, another private key, and I give it to you and you and you. And only you can access this data, right? And so this was the first iteration. What's coming now in multi-box, we can now share like parts of the trees, or we can just say, look, this is the tree I want to share with you, and all the data that's inside, only you and me can see. Nobody else has the keys. Nobody else can decrypt this. And everything is AIS encryption or ecliptic curve, like 512, right? So yeah, this is again just like it came out of test, right? It's not like an application that we were planning to do. It came out, right? So I would just invite everybody, try our library. It's very powerful, very simple, and you can just fork it and go on. So yeah, that's for me. That's. Yeah. So when we were working and trying to solve all these kind of problems when you encounter when you have like huge amounts of data, right? And as Zenel said, in blockchain space, 2 megabytes, you don't store the 2 megabytes on blockchain, right? You don't put the 2 megabytes in Bitcoin or Ethereum. You don't do that, right? So, but even if in this decentralized world, you know, if you put it, okay, on Swarm, you can do it, and soon you'll be able to put really huge amounts of data on Swarm. The problem that we have to ask ourselves is how we will manage this kind of data, how we will transform this kind of data, how will somebody of you say, okay, I'm giving you the data, you want to do whatever you want to do with it, right? And you want to do this in such a way that I will trust you, okay? So we said, look, maybe it's not the best way, the best thing to bring like trust system into trustless environment, right? Because Ethereum is trustless. But if we deal with consents, and I agree that I will give you the data, right, that you can process, then it's okay, right? I gave you the data to you, or I just gave you the access to it. I didn't give you the data. I just gave you the right for you to access it, right? And then we have like three patterns how this goes, right? So one is my data and your algorithm, whatever transformation it will be happening, and my machine, right? So I pay you for your algorithm, I run it on my machine, on my data, I transform it, I get the results back, and I give you back the algorithm. Nobody will touch it again, right? Or, I mean, at least I paid for it, I executed it, we proved it, and that's it, right? So this is the first case. The second case is when I have the data, you have the computing power, and there's like third party that gives the algorithm, right? So what happens? Now I give you like, I'm sorry, but so now I give you the consent, right, to use my data for that particular algorithm, and the owner of the algorithm also gives the consent to use the algorithm to run it on your machine because he trusts you, right? So this trust is like one way, right? So you take my data, you run it on your premises because you have big machines and whatever, but you don't know how to transform it, and you use his algorithm, right? So this is the second case. And the third case is when the guy that has the algorithm doesn't want to give the algorithm away, right? So he owns like a computing power and an algorithm, and the data comes to him, right? So this is in cases, for example, like federated learning or different kind of machine learnings or stuff where you don't want to give away, where you just don't trust it, right? So especially now when the federated learning is like in coming up, this is very, very, let's say, interesting, these types of how transformations go, because, for example, you have like a hospital. The hospitals, they will not give away the patient data, right? But they will allow to run the trainer on their data, because they will be satisfied that their data doesn't go away. It's probably anonymized and stuff like that, right? So you bring the algorithm, you run it in their premises, and then you send the results out, and then this algorithm, this trainer goes to another hospital, it runs there, and there. And the beauty of the blockchain and the beauty of all this is that we know exactly on which data this model was trained, who gets the parts of it if this is successful. You know? So when the model is trained, right, and it gives the successful results, you know all the chain up who gets pieces of cookie, right? So we devised this like a proof of concept. It works again on Swarm. It uses blockchain. It's like it uses the blockchain as an incentive system and Swarm as a storage layer. But the storage layer is now like separated into the algorithm, into the, let's say, the directory of those that wrote different algorithms, the transformations. And then you have like the storage where you say, okay, this is my data, I'm giving this to, it corresponds to this algorithm, and how we solve that. So in this, everything is like, it has to be equipped with schema, right? So the inputs, they say that my requirements are, I need this data, this is the schema that I require it in, and the outputs are this, and this is the schema that the outputs have to be, that will be compliant with, right? So then you can do like chaining, and I can say, okay, You are a pizza delivery guy, you will deliver me pizza, and I will give you the receipt that, you will give me the receipt that you delivered the pizza, and I will say yes, and this receipt will go, and it will go to the guy that will print this thing out, the receipt will be printed, and it will be like in this material world, but basically when it comes to the let's say, to the Fius, tax guys will say, oh, where did you spend your money? And you will say, look, here is the receipt, but you can also check it and validate it in the blockchain. It was there, blah, blah, blah. Here is it, because I ordered the pizza, right? And all these small services can use this kind of paradigm very easily, right? Because everything is actually done. They just say, okay, so I want to offer the service. I register my service, and I say, look, I want to print the documents for you. This is the type of the document you send to me. It costs so much, and I will deliver to you the printed document. Or it doesn't matter. It's not important if at the end of the day the result is materialistic, right? It can be just like completely digital. So these compute nodes are actually, they take the data, they take the description of the project, which is a program, it gets compiled inside, it gets inserted into like secure execution environment, and then it pulls the stream of data from Swarm, it transforms this data, and it goes through it, right? And because we know that it's like this secure execution environment was not tackled with, we can be quite sure that this guy did as he said that he would, right? We cannot prove the whole decomputation yet. We're still working on this, but moving slowly. Yeah? So this is a proof of concept, yeah. Yeah, maybe.
Maybe to conclude, so you know, the case we had with this DNA sequence. So what we've seen is we have the possibility, the way how to store that data. And this was the example with FairDrop. So FairDrop, what it does, you send the file, and file can be anything. You put it there, and it stays there. It's here to stay. And then there is another thing. So anyone with the right consent can access the file. And not the whole file, but only a part of it. And this is where we come to the DNA sequence. So the whole idea behind DNA sequences is that DNA sequences are quite expensive to get them. So I think now the sequencing is around 80 euros, but they themselves, they have a lot of value. So basically, if we can, it's the case where we can really start to work on DNA economy. So basically, anyone can get free sequencing if you will allow to use that kind of data later. And that's the logic behind. So we have the way how to store it, and we have the way how to put together the algorithms that take part of that thing and produce something new. And that's the whole idea. Thank you very much. Any question?
Yeah, I have a non-technical question. You mentioned that I can get my, so it's my understanding, so I can get my data from wherever, right? So Google, Facebook, or whatever. And I can store it here.
Yeah.
In whatever that place will be.
It's your place.
Yeah, it's my place. First question is, we have then double records, right? So it's not like I'm taking away the data from them, right? They still own that data until...
No, they don't own. Actually, it's against law that data is there.
Okay.
That's the point.
But I can't be sure that they have actually, that I took the data and they don't have it anymore in their files, right? So there's no way for me to...
If you can prove that they still have it and you said delete it,
It's a
Yeah, it's illegal. So when it will start, it will be heavy for the corporations. Yeah.
And then you also mentioned that whatever I do, so whatever data I produce with my activities, whether they are digital, I'm leaving digital footprint.
Yeah.
Is there a way that automatically that data gets saved?
Stored there. Yeah. That's the idea.
So that's the idea.
That's the idea.
That's a lot of data.
It's a lot of data. Yes, of course.
What about the physical footprint or data that I produce in the physical world?
Yeah. So at the beginning, it's about tech. So if you compare our situation right now with where the internet was, I think we are somewhere where we got Mosaic. So graphical browsing of the internet that was still extremely slow, and we talk about modems that were, I don't know, it was 2,400 or something like that, or even lower. And we still hear the sound of data. This is sexy. Some of us will remember the sound of data, and so for now, we are now pushing the limits, how far that can go, and this is somehow connected to that pinning part. So how this pinning part will function is now a little bit aware. But for the beginning, we are not talking about taking all the data from the big tech companies, but having the importers that are taking the important part of the data and store it there. So the data with value, yeah.
Okay, so I'm sorry to interrupt you. Who decides?
You have really good questions.
Who decides what the really important data is?
It's your choice.
So I do that.
So Fair Data Society is building technology and combining all kind of importers that are in public domain.
Other projects are actually building the importers, right?
Yeah, you mentioned that. So you're building actually the platform, the infrastructure.
So
Yeah.
like
You want others to
Yeah.
start building the
Yeah.
products for us. So,
And the small vision is to build your own personal data, the best you can get right now in the world.
so is there a way? So for now, on the data fund or Fair Data Society, there's no way for me, unless others start building with your technology. Is there a way for me to just consent and say like, I trust you to gather all my data from whatever I do online?
No, you.
Store it here, so I don't. Have
So it will not be I trust you. You will say I consent that algorithm that does that and store it back. So there will be no central point. That's the point. So the compute node is not a centralized thing. It's somewhere there. You give the consent, you see it. There will be what is that? Somebody will go through the code, of course.
Yeah.
So there will be some kind of reputation management of these codes down there. But basically, it's about you give the consent, it does the thing, and things are getting stored into your data fund. Okay. Data fund is actually the place. Yeah.
And it's all stored on the Ethereum blockchain?
Everything on Swarm. Yeah.
I can run my own node if I want?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here we get to pinning. Here we get to pinning. Yeah.
Cool. I don't have any more questions for now.
Yeah, those UX guys. No, but I have really good question for. So we have a task: how to deal with so many consents on hourly or minute basis. So there will be a lot of how to do that. This is a big chunk of work for UX designers. Yeah. Yeah. Very similar, but this will be, it's like, so you can imagine it's like, do you accept cookies, but accept cookies for every single purpose of that, it's crazy when you start to think about where it leads. So it's really crazy. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so like for most of the talk, the one thing I was thinking is, since it's a decentralized system with the data storage, so why would people store my data? Now, I finally looked it up, so you actually have incentives for people to store the data.
Yeah,
You're using
yeah.
Ethereum, so you pay them. I mean, how did you figure out? I mean, is it worth it for me to
So
store data?
yeah, so it's so the data fund is working on that incentive layer. So the system memorizes everything. So that data came from that source. So somebody was storing it for now. It comes here. I was the one, me as a person, I was the one that was giving the consent that that is happening. And then we have the system that takes care of everything. At the beginning, it is a little bit hard, but most of that part is actually covered by the swarm itself, so in their incentive layer. But for us, it's actually about usage of the data. So when the data is used, then we have the algorithm that goes back into the blockchain and checks when the things were happening and the monitor is getting back. So that's the logic of the incentive system. So but the incentive system is quite well described in the white paper, but not the last one because they are copying us too much. Yeah.
Maybe, I mean, a couple of things like related to this. So you do need to have some kind of redundancy. So there will be some like write of
Yeah,
replications
yeah.
when you store something. So do you kind of shut it up like into, is it like 4 kilobyte pieces?
Yeah,
and then
that is called chunking. Yeah, maybe.
okay.
No, you can't actually. You can't shut it down. It's resistant.
Like you know, you split it up.
You remember
Yeah.
torrent on steroids.
So there are always at least 6 copies actually of the chunk somewhere, or there is there is like a technique where they use it, where they can prove that that data was there, and they can pull it back. And it's like, I think that like it's about 2% of the file. If it's missing, you can get it from other, because all these are like proofs. And they can get this, if the data is missing, they can get it back, because
Otherwise,
the magic of crypto, man.
explain that, but our colleague Zakur that was
Yeah, he should be here. Yeah.
he can answer all the questions regarding
Okay,
that.
so maybe less technical. I don't know if it's
Yeah.
less technical. So one big thing. So we're talking data. Data is my data.
Yeah.
But who's gonna make the standard? Like, I mean, I need to be able to read the data. It's not just a binary blob. Like, it needs to be some kind of categorized
So
data.
this is where we have schemas, and this is where we work intensively with companies and actually maybe better said organizations that are working on that topic for a long time. This is Kantara and Citra.
Also, there are movements.
Yeah. My data.
Any structured data can be almost automatically equipped with
No, but this question of structuring data and telling what is that and how this is done, it's an old story. So we are not starting from scratch. Yeah. A lot of things is happening.
We are not trying to invent how schemas are. This is not. We are just using them, right?
I think there will be in a month or two. I think we are hosting my data workshop in Ljubljana.
Yeah.
So if you're interested, come around. Super cool people. Yeah, ladies first. Yeah. No, it's much bigger than consent. So consent is just one small part of everything. So there are different layers. So the most important and the basic layers is where to store it, and how to store it for a longer time, how to access only small pieces of data, etc. And then you have that legal part, which is actually the most important, because that part actually transforms the data into assets. So yeah. So we have a super interesting video about that, how it goes. It was just released a few weeks ago. through our cooperation with Kantara. Yeah. So, it's an interesting topic. So then we go back and then we end at the beginning. Yeah.
So the question is really about Swarm. What's the approximate size of data that you can store on a Swarm right now?
Right now,
Yeah,
I think that we are like 25 gigabytes.
Not per person at a time. How many nodes are there? Because you said there are.
How many nodes are there?
There are like
This
six
changes
nodes.
all the time. This changes all the time. I can't say.
Okay.
I know that they are booting up like test networks with hundreds of nodes, but I don't know actually how many nodes are running right now.
Okay. Approximation is interesting here because, for example, if you have 6 copies of your data on, well, and always, you actually put your data on a Swarm node and you have 6 copies of your data all the time. What is the guarantee that you will always have your data there? And how cost will be determined for the
These are questions that are way overhead for these are the questions actually for Swarm guys. You know. Sorry. So these are the questions that are way overhead. These are the questions for the Swarm guys, right? I can just say that pinning is one of the solutions that can and will help you, for example, to store your data on your own node, right? It will never be like erased, garbage collected, right?
But that's not my point. I don't want to store my data on my node.
No. You can send it to me and pin it for me, but in that case you will have to pay me, right? Yeah. But this is way over my head to say it now, right?
Data storage
Yeah.
possibly unlimited amounts for all the time.
Who will give you unlimited time?
I'm interested in price.
Yeah.
Pinning is the
Oh,
only
that's-
solution right now because this is the hot topic.
Yes.
No, we are opening all the time that discussion about the 1 gigabyte data file that will be accessed 10 times. Maybe. Maybe. So and right now the only solution for that is pinning, and pinning will be done by our team, by Zahur concretely. So I can link you to Zahur, and then you have a wonderful talk. He is a super cool guy, but you know he lives in India, so it's mind the time difference.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, but pinning. That's the point. It's a small number. We are talking about few percentages, but no, this is the beginning, I think, and that's why we are, people are lazy, especially the youngest generations. So give me the utility, give me instant reward, and that's it. So basically, it will be. We will have to teach them. It will become a part of the elementary education.
So millennials are actually more caring about data than speech
I'm not sure. But you know, it's a great question, and we are working on that. You know, I'm still sociologist, and this is one of my passions. I have so many passions. Yeah. But it's the most important question right now. So, but you know, it's about legal. So that's why we say GDPR is actually an enabler for what we're doing, because legally speaking, these big corporations will not be allowed to do the thing in the same way as they were doing it till now. So when you have such an issue that nobody cares and you know what is true, then you make laws, which are actually good. I think it's pizza time. Thank you very much for all the questions.
Guys, please stay for the pizza and drinks. Let's hang out. And I hope this was really helpful to you and that you gain a lot of insights in those few different topics. Please stay around with our speakers and let's share some more knowledge and experiences. Thank you all for coming.